All right, Dave. Well, welcome back for another episode. Looking forward to this, man. You thought today in this one we could talk about planers versus jointers. You've shared with me a lot of the different equipment, things that you teach down at the school. Whenever you can just talk about basically the difference in those two tools, what you do with them and so forth.
Well, I'll tell you what I did at the boat shop. Anytime I wanted to straighten something, I just open up the planer and shove it in. And I always wondered why it didn't come out really straight. It came out a little smoother, but not really straight. And then someone said, well, it's that old garbage in, garbage out. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, if you put garbage in, you're going to get smooth garbage out. I was like, okay, well, how do you flatten it? And that's where the jointer comes in.
Okay.
And it takes a little bit of talent to use it. You need some experience. But once you get it, you're able to actually make the first fully flattened plane. It really should be called a planer because it makes that flat plane. And then the planer should be called a paralleler because it parallels that first plane.
Okay.
And then you actually come out with some really nice S2S. The cutter heads are often very similar, not much of a difference, but the location is different. Whereas normally on a planer, the cutter head is on the top. On a jointer, it's down low. And you have an in-feed and out-feed table, very similar to a planer. But on a planer, the in-feed and out-feed are at the same level. In a jointer, what happens, you have your cutter head here, and the in-feed table is down. And it's down some small amount, so it allows the cutter head to take it off, and then the cutter head, roughly, and the out-feed table are at the same height.
Gotcha.
So as it comes over, it receives it after it's been cut.
So you adjust that in-feed table based on what you're trying to take off, so
Yep.
to speak. Okay. Could you review just if I've talked about rough lumber in this series and how it comes in general. If we had some chunks of rough lumber wanted to go down to a surface product, could you talk about the steps the order of steps and how you would use those two tools to do that?
Sure, and this always bears repeating, okay? So essentially, the first time after we've cleaned the wood, made sure there's no steel or anything that's going to nick those knives, okay? The second thing, we look to read the grain, see if we got any steep grain runoff or any weirdnesses or a knot that's going to give us some trouble. And then at the same time, reduce the size to something that's manageable. Okay. I have some of my students that are 6'4" and I'm me. And they can reach their hands over a large area. I can't. So I will tend to, as much as I can, try to make it a very manageable size. And then jointing a face, planing the opposite face, coming back to the jointer and jointing the edge to get us 90 degrees and have surface 3 sides. Go over to the table saw, rip it parallel, then come back to the jointer on edge and make a light pass, giving us surfaced 4 sides.
Gotcha. Listening to that process, question comes to mind. I prep my board and I'm ready to do my first pass on the jointer. Is there something inherent in what's going on with those two faces that may make me choose one side over the other?
Good point.
If I've got an inch of a knot showing on one side versus 2 inches, am I automatically going to go to the smaller knot face, or is it grain? Does grain drive it?
It is grain. So if you got a plain sawn board, okay, you may find that some of the grain is starting to go down like this and then steeply come up.
Yeah.
Okay. We generally tend to go with the percentages because you have a cutter head that's turning in this fashion and you're feeding in to that cutter head. Okay. If it's really gnarly, you're going to take a very light pass, maybe a 30-second, and you're going to be going very slowly over it in order to get it square. A piece of softwood lumber, no problem, and it can be done pretty quickly.
Okay. You're talking about a shop environment like at the school. I've heard you talk about this day and age, there's things that you and I, for a remodeling company out doing people's work, we could do some of these types of things at a job site now.
Yep. Generally, there are smaller jointers that we can actually have on site, but they tend to be 4 to 6 inch heads. They're fairly small. So it's pretty narrow piece.
Versus 8 at the shop?
Versus 8 to 21 at the shop.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, these are mega tools that you would never want to bring on a big site.
Okay.
But I know a lot of finish carpenters that will have a combination of a small jointer and a planer on site, and they'll be able to do some pretty impressive work.
Okay. And then what type of setup as far as getting so if my portable jointer Does it have an in-feed and out-feed table with it, or
does.
do I have to build that?
No, it does. It has one.
Okay.
Here's the issue. As the jointer gets smaller, the tables get smaller. So your surfaces to support are smaller. So if you're trying to joint 8-footers, that's a difficult one. But this gets back to the other possibility, which is using a track saw to do the jointing. And I've done this many times. The wonderful part we didn't mention about the track saws is they can be joined, so the tracks. So we have taken some materials that are 16 feet long, joined the actual and made a beautiful straight rip, which we needed to do on a 16-footer. So, and that in some ways takes the place of the jointer because it's giving us a nice straight edge. It is not, however, giving us a flat face and an opposite paralleled flat face.
Yeah. So the job site planer, do you have to build a table for that?
You can build a carriage jig to act as a wide jointer, if you will. Okay, it's fussy, but you can do that.
Okay.
Frankly, I'd rather do that back at the ranch and then bring that material with me on site. And I think for a lot of builders too, what they realize is there's cabinet shops that are eager to have their work. So, and it would take them, the cabinet shop, it'll take them 10 minutes. It's going to be longer to load it off the truck and put it back in than it is to actually do the work. So I really tell my students this is an opportunity. If you're able to work it within the cabinet shop, you can have everything faced, you can have it all edged, and then you can go in and apply it.
Yeah. But I really appreciate you covering this and fill us in on planers versus jointers. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Jim.